Hello, it's time for an end of summer veg garden tour. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm. For anybody new to our garden, we have 22 raised beds here. Each one is about 14 feet by 4 feet, and I've numbered them. On this side is 1 to 10. On that side is 11 to 20, and then there's the 2 extras at the far end. I'll put up an image on the screen highlighting which bed I'm talking about as I talk about them. So a couple of days ago I had a look back at a veg garden tour from earlier in the year when everything was just starting to grow, and I thought it would be nice to have a look at the difference between then and now. The asparagus bed has been amazing. So they were planted a year or so ago, and although we bought 2-year-old crowns, I've hardly cropped from these to give the plants a chance to really establish themselves. But if you haven't seen an asparagus fern before, they are beautiful, very light and fluffy and frondy, absolutely beautiful. The interesting thing about this is that I had put in 4 different varieties. Some of them have done a lot better than others. So this one at the end, for example, has got masses of shoots and has done really well, and there are others at this halfway down that have just sent up 1 shoot this year, so obviously they're going to take much longer to establish. This plant, however, I think next spring we'll be harvesting from this an awful lot. So this bed has been absolutely covered in weeds at various different points throughout the year, and I have weeded like mad, but I have got Verbena boreensis in here, which I just love. Now, it's not the best place for it, but it is really pretty and it's great for pollinators, so I'm really happy to have that in here. There are some strawberries in here that have either self-sown themselves, or when I've eaten strawberries, I know I've thrown a few bits into here, so they may well have grown from that, or runners have come through. I'm quite happy for the strawberries to be in there, at least for now. And then over on this side, back in the spring, I was telling you that the far end was absolutely covered in weeds. So what I did is put down some paper feed sacks, empty ones, and a couple of pallets on top of them to smother the weeds. Unfortunately, brambles have grown through from the duck area over here, but they're easily removed with a bit of judicious cutting them back. So the end at least is clear of small weeds. There is some asparagus in here, and this is a Taunton Dean kale. So this is a perennial kale, and also in here I put a lot of Babington leeks and Egyptian walking onions. Now the onions are absolutely wonderful. They produce little bulbils on the top of them, and then the plant, the weight of that takes it down to the ground, and these root in the ground. Now these I can pull off here very gently. They've got tiny little root system at the base. I'll pop these into the ground and these will form new ones, and so slowly that area will also have onions in it. The next 2 beds are soft fruit, so the strawberries on this side have been absolutely brilliant. This was their second, and for some of them it was their 3rd year, and they have cropped very heavily. They've sent out masses of runners, and very shortly I'll show you what to do with the runners. And this side, these are the raspberries that were cut right down to the ground, so they've got back up to waist high, and a bit further back some of them are more like head high, and have produced some really beautiful, very delicious raspberries for us this year. It has been a really good year for raspberries. I have picked pounds and pounds and pounds, and I've frozen them all, and then I will use them throughout the winter, well, right through now until these start again next July. And so the next 2 beds, number 3 and 13. Bed number 3, I sowed parsnip seeds, and I Did 1 row of parsnips, 1 row of carrots, and I also put in some radishes as well. Well, the radishes only took 3 or 4 weeks and they were out. The carrots have been and gone, and that has just left me a bed of parsnips, and these are, well, pretty much ready to harvest. But parsnips are much better if you leave them till after they've had the first frost, because all the starches in those roots, the action of the frost turns those into sugars, and so your parsnip then becomes a very sweet parsnip, and that's what I really like. And this bed back in the spring had onions in it that I had planted from sets in the autumn, so November-ish last year, and I'd then put in a few lettuces in the spring. So the lettuces have been and gone, except for these ones, which have gone to seed, but I am leaving some of them to go to seed to collect the seeds from them. So there's a few that have gone to seed. So onions came out, and turnips went in. They came out. Carrots have gone in. They came out. Next lot of carrots have gone in, and also some celeriac as well. So haven't grown celeriac before. That's a new one for me. We will see what that's like at the end of the year. These 2 beds, this had the garlic in it, so I did the garlic trial just here. And if you haven't seen the garlic trial, I'll leave a link up there to it. So it had garlic in it, the garlic's come out, and this is a Greek gigantes, which is it's like a runner bean, but you don't eat the actual green bean pod. You wait until they've got really fat. Here's one from earlier. And the bean on the inside is what you eat. So you eat these really big, beautiful white beans. They're very creamy, they're potatoey, they're great in soups and stews. They're also just great cooked with just a little bit of butter, maybe even some garlic on them, and they've become a staple of our winter diet. And the last 2 beds in the front part of the veg garden, this had a row of peas in the middle of it and potatoes each side of that. They're pretty much all harvested now. I think I've just got 2 potato plants left at the far end. I've taken the tops off them to allow the skins on the potatoes to toughen up just a little bit, so they'll come out in the next week or so. And the only thing that's now left in here are the Greek gigantes beans that I grew in here last year. So you may remember that I've been trying to grow effectively perennial beans. So instead of taking the plants out at the end of the year, I cut them off and leave about 6 inches of stem. I didn't think that any had survived in this bed, and I ended up digging quite a few of them out when I put the potatoes in. As it turns out, the ones that were left in there have done really well. So we have now got a crop of Greek gigantes beans on those. I will be leaving those in place. Alternatively, I may lift these and put them into bed number 14, which has got the most of the Greek gigantes in it now, and let that be my gigantes bean bed for the next few years. And then on this side, it's had carrots and beetroots, it's had turnips, it's had quite a lot of things in it. It's now got charred French beans and beetroots in it, and it's also a bed where there was a volunteer squash grew, and it turned out to be a really big, chunky, healthy jumbo pink banana squash, and we've had 3 huge squashes on it so far, and it's still producing young squash now. In the spring, Mr. J and I created a support for the runner bean canes, because for the last 3 years, as it's got windy in August and September, our bean canes have just been knocked to the ground and it's broken the plants. So we constructed this very sturdy frame, and I'm really pleased to say that so far the canes have stood up to the wind with this extra support that they've got, and we're getting a really good crop of runner beans. The beans started very late this year in cropping. The weather has done funny things with them, but now they seem to be doing really well. It is getting really windy and we are due to have thunder, lightning and high winds today. So I'm hoping that I haven't spoken too soon with the beans, but so far it's done really well. This bed has currently got purple sprouting broccoli in it. It's covered over to try and protect it from cabbage white butterfly and cabbage moth. No, it hasn't been 100% successful because this is one of the pieces of netting where I didn't sew up the holes at the side. So I have pulled at least one butterfly out of here, but it is doing okay. And this is the time of the year when there are fewer butterflies around, but the other thing that happens is I open up the fence here. So I am now standing in the duck enclosure. So it is open for the ducks to come through, and they can come through and go through all the pathways across any of the beds that they can actually climb into or get into, and clear it of slugs and snails, and they are so efficient at doing this. And I'm very happy if they nibble a few leaves here and there. I'm okay with that. Generally they don't eat too much greenery because they've got so much greenery in there, but they do go through and lift a lot of the slugs and snails, which is great news. This bed was one that was a Three Sisters style planting, so it had the sweet corn, French beans and squashes, and as I showed you last week, the beans have gone and I've planted it with salad crops, although I suspect that the ducks may have moved things around. I didn't really think that one through, so I'll have to keep an eye to see whether any of those salad crops come up, or whether the ducks have actually just disturbed the soil so much and eaten the seedlings as they come. We'll have to wait and see. And this bed is number 17, and it's the one that I was not going to grow in this year. I was just going to leave it covered all year, and then once I checked under the weed suppressing membrane to see whether the weeds were killed off, they were. So filled that up with some compost, and there's now beetroots and lettuces in there and some squashes. This bed I'm going to really have to have a think about, because whatever I put in here, it doesn't do very well, and the soil looks lovely, but actually what it is wood chippings that have now just broken down completely, and there was some bags of compost bought from the garden centre 2 years ago. So I have a feeling that although it looks nice, there's actually very little nutrition in there because everything struggles. So it's had squashes in it, it's had beans in it, whatever I put in there is struggling, and not 100% success. This bed, on the other hand, has been great. Again, there are some of my perennial beans. These ones are a runner bean, not the Greek gigantes, and rather than harvesting them for the green beans, I'm going to leave these to grow. Have the white bean in the middle. It's a variety called White Lady, so it has a white bean, whereas most runner beans have a darker colour bean. This is a white one, and again we have it in the winter with soups and stews and lots of other dishes. And I really like the flavour of them. I also put in 3 different courgettes here, so a yellow patty pan, a white patty pan, and a yellow long courgette. At the end there are some onions, there's some bits of beetroot. It's a mixed bed, and I actually quite like this mixed bed growing where it's a selection of things. This short bed is the one that I had thought I would use as my grower gift bed, and in the end I decided just to plant extras right through the garden so that I would be able to donate more food at Christmas than I would grow in just this one bed. So at the end here we've got what looks like flat leaf parsley, like a giant Italian parsley. It's actually Hamburg parsley, and it's grown for its roots, so certainly you can eat the leaves, They smell fabulous, they taste fabulous, but the white roots are also superb for using, much as you would use a parsnip or a roasted carrot, that sort of thing. But obviously it has a parsley flavour. We haven't eaten this before, so when we do, I will let you know what it's actually like. I had a lot of beetroot in here. That was the beetroot Georgia. That's the one with the candy pink and white stripes through it. That's all gone, and what we've got left in here now is some more celeriac. This is dill, which I just love the taste of dill. I could just eat it like this. Mr. J's not keen on it, but I just think it's wonderful. And at the end there, I planted a couple of squashes. Now the squashes are all very much going over now. We've got a lot of powdery mildew and they're dying back, but it is that time of year. And we've had some good squashes from them, so I'm quite pleased with the squash crop this year. Not as many as we had last year, but it's still looking pretty good and plenty for us to see us through the year. So in this bed, number 19 is some strawberries. Now this is their 4th year of growth, so I think I probably could do with replacing them. I have said I'm going to lift all of these, use this bed for something else. I still haven't got around to that yet. And this bed at the end, well, this has been great. It's been a really productive bed. It's had broad beans in it, and in fact there's one growing there now, so it's had broad beans in it. I've cropped all of those, and I put alternated lettuce and swede, which I think is called rutabaga elsewhere. So most of those lettuces are now finished. The swedes are coming on really well, although they have been decimated by caterpillars. Lesson learnt: next year my swedes are going to go under netting, just to try and reduce the amount of cabbage white damage. And then this is skirret. So skirret, you eat the roots. You harvest them when they're about 3 to 4 years old or more. And I planted this as part of my move from annual to more perennial vegetables. So I got 2 skirret plants which I planted here. They are producing lots of seed, which I will collect and sow. And I've also bought some seed earlier in the year. They've grown into small plants, which I'll also get into this bed. And then hopefully next year this whole bed will be filled with skirret. And I may get to harvest one of these next year, and the rest of it will be the year after that. And then I'll just do a rolling programme of sowing more and planting them and seeing how we get on. Hello Monty, are you all right, boy? I was outside, so you had to come and join me, did you? Oh, yes, I know, and the ducks are being very noisy, aren't they? Over on this side, this bed has probably been one of my favourites this year. It's got yacon in it. I've never grown yacon before. I'm thinking it's probably just about time to harvest it. It's had squashes, it's had courgettes. Now this is the one that I definitely overplanted. I put way too many plants in it and they've really struggled. The courgettes are pretty much at an end now. We've got a lot of powdery mildew. Their leaves are drying out, so I need to get those out. These are borlotti beans. Now I didn't know whether they were dwarf or climbing beans because I didn't label the envelope, so I just labelled it borlotti beans, which wasn't very helpful. This year when I collect the seeds I will label them. So yeah, good crop of borlotti beans on this. You can see it's rocking in the wind quite a lot. We're almost at the end of the season for these in terms of them growing, and I'm just going to leave the beans on the plant as long as I can until the pods start going papery. Then I'll collect them and keep them. Now the 2 final beds at the end here are actually, neither of them have anything growing in them. They've got weed suppressing membrane on them. That side it's held down with a pallet. On this side it's held down with a big chicken frame, and the only thing that's growing along here is this artichoke. So I've got a fence up here, a temporary flexible fence because of the ducks coming into this area. So this is the artichoke that grew really well this year. It's sent out a couple of offsets which are now growing. So these ones can either be left in situ or I can move them, and that's what I will do. I aim to move these so they're not right in the middle of the pathway. And it is now starting to rain quite heavily. Cameras really don't like the rain very much, and so wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one, and I also hope you'll join me again next time.